gotta record.
All right. Do it again.
All right, we can do it now. Okay.
Okay, I love the energy we're bringing. I'm hyped up now.
Whew. Okay. Hey, welcome to the Ring of Fire. I'm Emmy.
I'm sorry. It was just such a like your brain left like for a second.
Okay. We got this. We got this.
I believe in this.
Hey guys, welcome to the Ring of Fire. I'm Emmy the Birth Wizard.
And I'm Alex Bye.
And we are Ring of Fire, where we talk about tough topics and make you breathe through it and realize that there's growth ahead. Yay! So this week is what's the scope of a doula?
Which I'm so excited about because I love this topic. And I bring it up all the time.
Do you? Yeah,
Yes.
I know you do. I don't know why
Yes,
I said
I
do you.
Well, maybe other people don't know. I bring it up all the time because I think it's a really important conversation to have, right? Because there are things that I see other doulas do that I'm like, oh, is that the scope of a doula? And then there's things that doulas don't do that I believe are like, I feel like every single person has a different idea of what a doula is, and even clients have a different view of what the scope of a doula is. So I love that we're talking about this.
Yes. Ditto. I think it's interesting that off of each training that you might get, you'll get a different scope conversation.
Yeah.
That one I'm very interested in, and I think that can inform people's like understanding, or even if they had their own doula and what their doula did with them versus not. And I think it goes into like something we've talked about many times before, which is like, this is truly work born out of ancestral knowledge and passing along. So it makes sense that each person would have a different idea of what that scope is and like where do we sit and what should we be doing. And so I'm excited to talk about this. But first, guys, we have our first sponsor.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
You guys want to know who the sponsor is? It's me. I'm the sponsor because I believe in this project so much. But the sponsorship is for my upcoming VBAC Wizard training, which is happening March 26th. It's a 5-hour class with an hour lunch. So a 4-hour class, but it's a 5-hour class. Where we discuss everything from the stats to comfort measures to like how to support someone mentally, how you should set up your prenatals, and like those moments of like, oh boy, we planned a VBAC and it's turning into a CBAC. What do I do now? Yeah. And then the very important part of how do we take care of ourselves as VBAC doulas, because that was a huge portion that was missing out of all of my trainings.
Yeah. Because
no one warns you really of those high highs and those low lows and how to deal with that. So that training's coming up March 26th. Go ahead and head to my website to sign up. And if you want a sponsor, like to sponsor an episode or have an ad space, go ahead and reach out to us either in DMs or via our email, please. Alex is still looking at those emails.
I know. Still haven't got an email.
Emails us, but it's ringofirepodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to email us. We can set up an agreement over ads and how many and like what that looks like to us when we had the conversation about ads and like how to do this, where we monetize this podcast, where it's accessible for people who are in our field and then also for people who want to be a part of this. This was a big discussion of would we take ads from Audible or
all the stuff that may not be. The thought is first of all, we can offer advertisements that can get to a very specific audience, which is who we're usually talking to, without like, let's talk about Audible and AdamandEve.com and all.
I would fucking Adam and Eve can call me any day. Any day I will take it to Adam and Eve.
You know what I'm saying? So it's instead of just like trying to monetize it in that way, we were thinking maybe it would be better to offer that to anybody who has businesses or products that would do well with
this crowd
with doulas and birth workers and stuff.
Yeah, and that means either if you're selling to a parent or you're selling to the birth workers themselves. So, come on. Message
Also,
us.
I did take Emmy's VBAC Wizard class.
You did.
And now I'm a VBAC Wizard.
You are a VBAC Wizard.
In my Instagram bio and everything.
Yeah, I love that.
It was great.
I have 2 birth wizards that have it in their profile.
Yeah.
And now I have you as the VBAC Wizard in your profile. I'll bother the other one soon enough to be like, you could put that in your bio.
Yeah, well, I had to ask permission. I was like, is this okay that I can call
myself?
that's
a part of it. You guys earn that title by being a part of that training. The other things that come along with that class are you're given a seal, so it's emailed to you, so that way you can put it on your website because it's education that you did.
Yeah.
The other things are I have a private Facebook group, so that way you are able to get a hold of me after the training because maybe you didn't have a VBAC client before, but now you do, and you have questions now that you've taken the training. You're like,
oh wait, now I have to put this into practice.
But also so you build that community with others who are working with clients like yours.
Yeah.
Because I find that's the most important space. And then the other part is I have resource lists on there, and I make sure that you guys are truly supported because it was the stuff I needed, and
nobody was sharing.
No one was sharing.
Yeah.
No one was sharing. No one was sharing. No Sharon and Karen. So, yeah, come and join us March 26th. There is a coupon code floating around there just for our Ring of Fire podcast listeners. Or what did we go with? They were fire starters. I almost called you flamers.
But that's us. We decided if we're going to use something that could be even remotely derogatory, we're going to use it towards ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so... for our fire starters, there is a coupon code just for my fire starters, so go ahead and grab that. It gets you $100 off, which it's a good amount.
Yes.
So I'm super excited to segue back into scope. Yeah. And
how do you feel that you just did an advertisement?
I feel weird.
I know.
I feel so weird that it's my own.
Let's take a deep breath.
I've actually done so many ad reads for other companies and other stuff. So I'm used to the hey, how's it going?
But when it's yours.
It's so weird when it's my own. I mean, guys, I'm just a small town girl. I'm not a small town girl.
You're like the opposite of a small town girl. You've lived all over the world.
I'm just a little thing that just is making her way through life.
I heard the twang at the end.
I'm in a weird mood, guys.
That's okay. This is exactly what I needed before we had this conversation.
Perfect. I think we should start with what we thought our scopes were before we became doulas.
Love it.
Or entering training.
Yes.
Or even in our early times of being doulas.
Okay.
Versus what we think now. And maybe if there was a catalyst or a shift that happened.
Okay. I think I thought the scope of a doula with once I looked into it, I was like, I viewed it as a bodyguard.
A bodyguard.
Yes, someone there to protect this person. That was my initial.
So Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston.
I know you're talking about a movie. I've never seen it. So I know there's a reference there that I'm not understanding.
It's just Black History Month. You don't have to know that movie.
I don't have to know the Whitney Houston movie. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Watch somebody in the comments is like, that was not Bodyguard. It was Bodyguard. Anyway.
Well, so that is what I assumed. And that was very preliminary, looking into what does a doula do and blah, blah, blah. And it really was some of the first things I saw was about obstetrical violence and things like that, and the maternal mortality rate. And so it did seem oh, people do need bodyguards. I'm there for it, right? Yeah. Which I kind of have the energy for that.
Right.
So. And I would say that once I took my training, then it kind of shifted into can I be an advocate? Should it almost took a little bit of that fire away.
Softened it.
Yeah, it softened it a little bit because then it turned into oh, can I help people? I can't advocate for people. Okay, how do how does the advocacy portion work then? So it was very like, that's where I left being confused with like, okay, I have the informational support, I've got the emotional support. That I feel is very like almost in you as a person, right? And then it was like, so then what do I do? Right? Yeah. And especially my training was through a birth center. And so it was very much through the lens of that and not so much through the lens of the hospital, right? So my doula training, I think, didn't really talk about what you do in the hospital or what you may come up against in the hospital or any of that kind of stuff. So I don't think there was an emphasis on advocacy in that training.
So now I answer my beginning
Yeah,
thoughts.
and then we can talk about now.
When I first got introduced to doulas, I thought the scope was nothing medical, and that it was all comfort measures, and that's why I was down. Because originally I was choosing between three things. I was choosing between being an IBCLC, a personal organizer, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Guys, it's really fucking funny.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not laughing right now, I'm really sad.
I'm laughing on the inside.
Right. And then the third thing being a doula. And when I looked at those three things, I was like, this one will allow me to, like, be able to, like, do my gig, my, like, fun thing, and then go home and everything's cool.
That's not what happened at all.
It is not, and it's also like so funny to me that I thought that way because of like how I am now.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's what got presented during my doula training a lot. Was you're not here to be an advocate. Like, you're here to get along with the hospital system. You're here to make sure that like birthers are comfortable. Like, your job is like to show up and like. I can't tell you how many times I heard the like definition of doula being like a servant.
Yeah.
Like, so I was like, this is great. I can have my babies at home and do the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I thought my scope was to show up and do hip squeezes, carry essential oils, and like be like, go team.
Yeah. I have a side note, and then I'll ask you about how you feel now. So my side note was I was having a conversation with somebody about how I wanted to be a teacher. And when I was in school, I decided to drop out because I didn't want to spend my career fighting against a system. And I said that to somebody the other day, and I said, oops, I guess I did it anyway.
Same, literally same. I literally, the first reason my original degree for college was special education.
Yeah.
And I got about a year in and realized it was not going to be what I wanted it to be. I thought I was going to be there to inspire kids and like do what a lot of my teachers did for me. But context, I grew up in international schools where you pay about $20,000 a semester to go there. So they weren't fighting against the system, which is what that education was setting me up for, was like how much you have to fight and how much like advocacy work was in special education in particular and how we had to be aware of that. I was like, I don't want it. No tanks.
Isn't that so funny? And then you fall into it.
I think, I don't even think I fell into this. I think, and this goes along with the story, I think I've always been attracted to advocacy work. I think I've always been attracted to that, like, stick up for the little guy, like, thing. And I think what's gone on over time is because I've talked about it, and we've talked about it, of imposter syndrome of like, but I'm not a big guy. Yeah. So how can I stick up for a little guy? Might as well put myself into a smaller role. Yeah. That way, you just don't even have to fight. Which is why you were cool
with like what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. That way I don't even have to fight. I don't have to pull out guns or nothing. Like, I can just...
I've definitely viewed myself as the big guy in that situation, right? But I just was like, oh, that'll be too hard. Let's find something easier.
It's funny. It's really funny.
And now we're here.
Yeah.
But so then that would be my question, is how has that changed now?
100% different.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just off of my description alone, if you guys look at like anything I interact with out there, you'll be like, that's definitely not how Emmy's acting.
Yeah.
And it was my very first birth that changed it all. Yeah. That was really it. I saw obstetric violence. I saw an individual scared out of their mind. I saw someone who needed a voice in the room, and there was no one else stepping up. And I realized it was me.
Yeah.
And although it was to an effect, and I've spoken very openly about this, that it was traumatic, not only for me, but for that mother.
Yeah.
But fuck, man, like 2 days after, I was like, I fucking did that. Like, I stood up for this individual, and I was able to, like, do the thing, and also confront a lot of my own trauma.
Yeah.
And, like, fight a bit of the system to the point where the provider looked at me at one point and goes, what do you think?
Yeah.
And that was that, like, oh, I do have a voice in this room. I don't have to fight for it. It's already seen.
Yeah.
And I can protect people, and I can, like, give them a better journey.
Yeah.
Let's go then. Like, let's go. Let's, like, do the thing. So that's really what changed it.
Yeah.
Was that first kickoff and realizing I wasn't there for comfort measures.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially in a hospital setting, there are other comfort measures available to them.
Yes.
You know, and that's what's so interesting when we talked with Lindsay about, like, the people who, like, do home births and birth center births. They're like, oh, I don't need a doula. I'm like, you need the comfort measure kind, probably. But we also talked about how advocacy is needed at home and birth centers as well. But and I definitely believe that. But it's very interesting because that is kind of how people
view it.
Frame doulas.
Just as a reminder, guys, that was a prior episode, our first official guest,
Lindsay
King. So go ahead and check out that episode if you haven't already.
It was a great conversation.
On Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm being a good ad host right now.
You are!
On all the platforms. But make sure you check it out because she did say the significant thing that you still need advocacy in home birth centers, any place where a birth is going on, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to highlight it of, I feel that the ones who are being told that they are not advocates are attending trainings with the vision or the we'll use the word vision.
Yeah.
Perspective is the word of a white doula.
Yeah.
Attending white births.
Yeah.
In spaces where it's all white people.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously obstetric violence happens against white individuals. Obviously.
Yeah.
That the birth I went to, the very first one that I'm talking about, was a white individual. However, that person was also fat and disabled and so many other things under that spectrum, but she still needed that advocacy. However, the training that I was given was centered around, that won't happen, you're fine. Yeah. You're fine. Like, you're fine. So I think
and that's what's
can really inform.
And that's what's interesting is because I didn't see where they're like, yeah, it'll be fine. I saw that they were like, hospital, scary place, maternal mortality, obstetric violence. You're not an advocate, though. Nothing you can do about it, right? Like, really, like, I saw these, like, feuding conversations where they're like, yes, you should be scared. Yes, there is, like, obstetric violence happening. Yes, people are dying, right? At rates that they shouldn't be. Here's how you do a hip squeeze.
You know what I find interesting about that? Because I've
only attend out of hospital births. Sorry, continue.
No, you're good. You attended a doula training with a birth center, so it makes sense that the narrative is that. Yeah. The birth center was constructed to combat that while not also interacting with it or having to actually, like, fight it. Right?
Yes, and the same with home birth. It's separating itself from that system in a lot of ways.
I have been very open over my first training was through Doula.
Yeah.
Douna's mission is to get doulas into hospitals. Yeah. So they were talking to us about the most important place for a doula to be is in a hospital. Then everything else, like,
they'll be fine. They made it out of the hospital.
Why then are you telling me not to be an advocate? Yeah. Like, why are you telling me that I should not be, like, prepared? Also, why are you not telling me if I do see something, how to report it or say something?
Yes.
Like, beyond like, sorry that happened to you, champ. Like,
yeah, like we were there together, experienced the trauma with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
and that's where I wonder, and that's why I think this is such a good conversation, because I hear so many doulas ask about that and talk about, like, should I be an advocate? How do I be an advocate, right? Like, question after question, right?
Yes.
Because they don't know what to do or how to do it. They don't know how to advocate. But I do feel like those organizations that are training people to not advocate are because they don't want doulas to get kicked out of hospitals.
No.
Because that's what I hear doulas say.
No.
If I advocate too hard, I'll get kicked out.
No. I think that is a scapegoat of an argument. Because truly, the hospitals have no say of kicking you out unless you stop a major medical event happening.
Yeah.
Essentially, you step in front of a provider and you're like, no, don't save her from bleeding out, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would have to do something to that effect, right? To be removed off a premises or kicked out or whatever it may be. But I'm saying,
because they're not kicking out mother-in-laws,
right?
They're not kicking out partners like every left and right, you know.
Yeah. It's a scapegoat of an argument. The reason they tell you not to be an advocate is so you don't mess with the system. Like, I will say it one more time because it was fast.
Yes.
The reason they're telling you not to be an advocate is because you're messing with their money.
What do you mean by that? Because
they're pushing nurses through these programs. They're pushing the most significant people that were in mine were social services workers who were working with like teens.
Yeah.
So their scope is not for a doula. Truly, they're doing a doula training.
Yeah.
But really, what they're doing is a comfort measures class and like birth physiologically, but it is not a doula training. Okay. So that way they can like sell it to not just people who are like, I want to be a doula.
They can expand the number of people they sell to.
Yeah. Yeah, because the people who were attending were outreach individuals to high risk groups, as in like teens. Yeah. And then the other group were nurses. We had a ton of nurses in there.
That's interesting.
And that's a great way to sell it to a nurse. Yeah. Of like, I'm going to give you all this extra education, but honey, you're not the problem. You don't need to advocate. Like, you're great.
They wouldn't teach them to advocate against themselves and their other nurses and their doctors and the whole
No, because your system is taking care of people.
Yeah. Oof,
that's my personal take on it.
No, and I totally understand where you're coming from with that.
At least with Doula, right?
Yeah.
At least with Doula, and we can see it after the legislation that they've like been kind of hanging around with. We can see it off of like the stuff that's put out there. We can see it off of the fact that they still promote Ina May. Like, we can see it in their values and like should I be like, they came up in the 60s. Like, it was a different time. Yeah, fuck off.
It's not the 60s anymore. Right. You can still adapt and change and grow your organization as time goes on, and that goes with any organization.
Like not take fucking faxes anymore.
Yeah, like everything could be digitized.
Yeah.
Side note: everybody should be digitizing everything
by now. Yeah.
If you're gonna make me fax something, I probably won't do it.
You're killing a tree, man, for something that I can make into an email.
Yes, easily. Yeah.
And it'll be more secure than me faxing it.
My husband had a client that was nervous about paying an invoice online, so he mailed him a check instead.
Oh my god. Okay. I won't get off on that side.
Sorry. Total offshoot. But it's the funniest thing ever.
The babe just made a really good point. Essentially what she stated was that she wishes that these trainings didn't put the blame on the birther for not knowing these things, not interacting with the system correctly, not like doing XYZ to get the best birth.
Yes. And
that they're the ones in control, so they're the ones responsible. And what they were saying was, I would 100% love for that person to be in control, but they're not. And that's a privilege
thing. That hurts the nail on the head. Oh my gosh.
Hey guys, just like a preview for later. She might be like a special guest. And but like I can't wait to dive into that comment with you because like fuck yes. All of that.
And that's where I feel like a lot of this comes from is people go to hospitals because that's where they feel safe. That's where they feel they're going to be cared for. They don't think that they have to think about anything else. But even to hire a doula, they have to have some knowledge that maybe it's not the safest place, or maybe they're not going to get all of the help they need.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the question that I always come to. What do you hire a doula for? Like, as a client, right, and I'm looking for a doula, what am I hiring a doula for? You know? And that's where I feel like, if it's not for advocacy, if it's not for education, right, and it's just for comfort measures, right, you could look that up online. That information's everywhere, right?
I think the greater question to me is this. Like, the people who will message me and be like, hey, I saw you're a doula, how much are you? And then after they're like, but just for birth.
Yeah.
Okay. My job's so much beyond just birth.
Yeah.
I would love to quote you that, my friend, because you're probably asking that for a reason. Yeah. Like, it's probably due to cost, like, analysis, and you're like, rent or doula, right? Harm or not, right? And that's really what it's coming down to. But at the same point, like, I think truly, and I've said it in prior podcasts, I feel like we're on this, like, tipping point with doulas, where we are going to be seen probably in the next 5 to 10 years as true, like, advocates and, like, really scraping against the system.
You think so?
I really think so. Because I feel like we're right here.
I'm glad you think so, because I feel like it's the opposite.
Oh, I'm glad.
I feel like more people are hiring doulas because we've talked about this. It's like the trendy thing to do, and right? And they still have no idea about what the doula is there for, or the importance of it, or what they could do. And then even if they hire a doula, are they standing the chance of hiring someone who cannot and will not advocate for them because they haven't been given the tools? They haven't been taught, like, here is how to advocate for people. They've decided to step back from that and focus on spinning babies positions and birth plans or whatever. Even that's some level of advocacy, right? But like, it's just so, I get so worked up by this because I see in the Facebook boards and people talking about these births, and I'm like, but you didn't say what you should have said. Right? Or you'll hear them say, I wish I should have said, I thought maybe I should have said something. Should I have said something? Yes, you should have said something, right? If you're asking yourself that question, the answer is probably yes. And it's not to shame people, right? Because it's not that I'm saying everybody should do this perfect every time. It's just, is that your philosophy to advocate for people, or is it not? Right? And if you're a client and you don't really know the difference, and you have the idea of what a scope of a doula is going to advocate for you, and you accidentally hire someone who's not?
Yeah.
Like, what happens in that situation?
So, and I've always loved your passion, and I know that I know that we sit on two different ends of the, like, spectrum of, like, thinking on this, but I sit on the other side. We are two doulas literally doing a podcast about setting people on fire, about advocacy work, who were both taught we weren't fucking advocates.
Yeah.
So that's why I, like, reject everything you just said, and I'm just waiting for people to, like, slowly get this, like, seed in their brain.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just one birth, and sometimes it's doing the work for years, and they figure it out.
Yeah.
And they figure it out fast. And it's because of the things they're interacting with, they can't close their eyes to it.
Got you.
And that's,
do you think they figure it out or quit, essentially? Like, they figure it out how to advocate, or they, like...
Or they quit. And
I'll choose to believe
there's the ones that quit to just doing home births, because I've seen that type of quitting where they're like, it was too hard to be in there and I couldn't do it. Fine.
And I've seen that,
But don't forget that you're still an advocate at a home birth level. You should still be thinking like, is this home birth midwife really giving this chick like the option to get castor oil at 37 weeks? Are we?
Is that ethical? Is that okay? Right?
Should
And
I
I've
bring
seen
that up?
I've seen that, and that was my eye opener of like, oh, it's not just always safe, right? I have seen where I'm like, oh, that was not informed consent.
Right.
Oops.
Weird.
We forgot some words there.
We didn't have an inflection up at the end of that statement, so it was not a question mark. But I think that's a part of it, though, is like, I do think maybe the intensity of advocacy at the hospital, people will be spun out quick if they're not able to do it. Yeah. And don't have that work like that big guy attitude, as we put it earlier. However, I don't think everyone's supposed to have that. Yeah. And I don't think every doula needs to have that. I don't think everyone needs to go in with leather jackets ready to like do
fight
Ragnarok.
Yeah.
You know? But I do think you do it on many different levels. Every time we can get information to people, that's a bit of advocacy work.
Well, and that's what I feel is like, I feel like I obviously like that is some of the energy that I have, right?
Same.
But I do agree that education is advocacy, that teaching people skills on how to speak up for themselves or ask questions or even do like freaking like brain, right?
Yes.
Asking for time, like all of that stuff is advocacy. It doesn't look like yelling at a provider, right? Yeah. I've never yelled at a provider or a nurse, right? But I still have advocated for people, right? Even birth plans, that's a form of advocacy. They're walking in with some concept of what is going to happen, the choices that they get to make, right?
Yes.
And that's where I feel like the issue that I see is I do feel like a lot of doulas focus on the birth, right? They don't focus on prenatals or postpartum or things like that.
Because the birth is where magic happens.
Yeah. But I feel that that's not where, like, I feel like we're needed so much as a whole.
Yes.
Right?
I agree
and
with
I
you.
really feel like that's where that community support can be, like, improved.
Yes.
Right? And that's where I feel frustrated the most when people are talking about doula work and they think it's just like cute and fun and like I get to be at births and da-da-da-da, right? My issue comes and my fire comes from people are dying.
They are.
Right? And people who are not white are dying at astronomical rates. Yeah. Right? Advocacy is needed. Yes. It's necessary.
Yes.
So when we talk about it like it's just like ha ha ha, beautiful pictures and, you know, that kind of thing. And, like, getting them into the right position and da-da-da, right? Like, that's where I feel like some people are missing that link. You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you. I also feel that a lot of times what's missing, too, is the fact that we're not medical providers. Because I can't tell you how many times I've come across doulas. I mean, there was that one that broke almost a year ago now with the one really famous chick off of TikTok where her doula was like, don't go into the hospital even though her water had broken. And like,
yes, I remember
we're
that.
not medical providers, y'all.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, I will knock you guys up the head every time I hear like medical shit come out of your mouths. Yeah. There's a difference between being like, this is what an NST is versus like, don't get an NST. Yeah. Because this and that. Right, like,
and you do see that a lot.
Oh yeah,
but the thing is, I do see that from people who are not doulas as well, who just like have birth related pages, which I find very interesting too. Oh, yeah. You have like 500,000 followers, and you're just spreading what, like just barfing bad information.
Look, do I think it could be improved as a whole? Yeah, I can. Yeah. But I have a much bigger issue though with the medical advice that's given out by doulas and making sure we stick in our lanes for that one. Because to your point of people dying, people die from that stuff. Like, babies die from that stuff. And I'm talking anything from, like, vaccine related to, like, the silly example I gave of, like, an ultrasound past 20 weeks. Right? Like, you can give the studies. You could give the, like, hey, here's information. Yeah. You disseminate from there, friend. Because, like, I don't have a fucking medical degree.
Yeah.
And if I did have a medical degree, I still wouldn't give it out because even doctors will still do the, like, here's that information. What do you think? At least good ones.
I've never met a doctor that's done that. I'm sorry.
A good doctor will do that with you.
I believe you. I believe of this fairy tale of, like, a doctor who, like, gives you information and lets you make a decision.
There's that. But good doctors will do that with you.
I agree, yeah.
They will let you know of, like, these are decisions. And you'll see it in, like, end-of-life care a lot of times of, like, do you want to continue the morphine or not? These are the differences that happen. Yeah. And walking the family through it. Like, those are things that providers do, but they have the education
to do so, yes.
To do so.
And I totally agree that is outside of our scope. And it's outside of our scope to even push decisions on people. Even if you know it's the right decision, you can't say you need to do this. Yeah. Right? You need to do the NST. You need to not do the NST. Whatever it is, you can't push that.
So I'll give an example from my own life where I almost overstepped. Mm-hmm. I had a client who at 41 weeks on the day, out of nowhere, woke up that morning super high blood pressure. Yeah. Couldn't bring it back down. She asked me, should I go into the hospital? I was like, yeah. You gotta go, right? Yeah. And she was attempting a VBAC, and I was like, here, I gave her a phone call of, like, have your bags packed. You're 41 weeks. We know the hospital you're going to. Yeah. They're either going to prep you for a median cesarean because you have high blood pressure, or they're going to talk to you about induction. Yeah.
Either way, you're staying there.
Either way, you're staying. Yeah. You're staying. So have your bags packed. When they arrived, she told me, provider doesn't want to do an induction, and gave a bullshit reason. We all knew it was a bullshit reason. It was essentially like PIT makes it higher for you to have a uterine rupture, which is like, it's a bullshit reason. And I immediately questioned back with, are you sure you don't want to attempt an induction? Yeah. Like, someone can give you a reason, a provider could recommend something, but it's up to you. Yeah. And that was me encroaching on that line. Because the client had already told me, no, I'm ready for my cesarean. I'm ready to meet my baby. And I was the one like, that medical advice was bullshit. Can we talk about that for a minute? Yeah. When that was not my place in the moment. So
I'll usually say, would you like any more information about this?
Yeah.
That's the way I try to put it, is like, I'm not trying to come from a biased, like, spot. But I am like, there is more information available if you want it.
Yeah, and that was one of those where it's pretty gray how I worded it and that kind of thing. So, hey, I've been there of, like, the frustration or the, like, fuck, I told you not to be with this provider. I told you not to go to that hospital. Things, I told, like, and now we're here. Yeah. And now you're not listening to the education I've been giving you all of these weeks because you heard one word and it's all crumbling.
It was something you were scared of, yeah.
It's all crumbling.
Well, and so then I think that leads to a really good conversation about what do clients think our scope is and how that affects the way
I think our clients think we do fuck all at this point. Like, I'm so burnt out, y'all. Like, I'm just kind of like...
Well, elaborate. What do you mean?
So, here's the thing. Like, you'll have the clients who are like, oh my God, you're, like, the most knowledgeable person I've ever met, and they'll follow you to the ends of the earth and all of that. Or you have the ones who forget to call you when they go into labor. Yes. And then, like, when they do call, they're at, like, 6 centimeters after getting an epidural, and then you arrive and you, like, try and, like, do the things to help them out, and then after that they're already having conversations with their providers about, like, doing other stuff when you went out to lunch, and, like, then you're showing up, finding up stuff, and then a baby happens and you're like, see you guys in 2 days, and then they're like, cool,
they don't call you during those 2 days. You call them and they're like, so I gave up breastfeeding, and you're like, well, like, I'm so glad you're making decisions.
I could have helped. I could have.
It's cool. Just keep your money. For me to do fuck all for you.
Yeah.
Like, so you'll have the two ends. And unfortunately, recently I've run into very other end.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a little bitter at the moment, but I think it's the truth.
I mean, it's a vacation.
I think I need some people who are kind of in that middle place, because I don't believe that I know it all.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that I'm the person who should make the call about your birth. However, I am a part of this team. And you don't
be treated like you're on the team.
You still signal the shortstop that you're going to throw to second.
Yeah.
So that way, it's a baseball reference. You still
head empty, or it's all left.
I really left wide open for a lesbian joke right there, and you totally just. You still let your buddy know, like, who's a part of the team, what's going on, so that way they're included in the process.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I always wonder is, why did you pay for a doula? As from a client perspective, you paid for a doula to not call them, to not lean on them, right? Because I have had clients where I'm like, hi, hello,
how you doing?
What's going on? Everything okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have to, like, quadruple text you, right?
We don't have to be best friends. We don't gotta wear matching bracelets or anything.
Yeah, exactly. But you did pay me, right? You hired support. Like, can I be supportive? You know?
So I found there's two reasons that ends up happening with that type of client. There's the client who had no idea what we did prior, and then throughout the process they're learning it, and that's why it's kind of a struggle bus, because they're like, I didn't know I was supposed to call you now. I got an epidural, so I thought.
I kind of give the spiel in my consults.
Yeah, me too.
This is what I'm for,
right?
And this is when you can reach out to me.
These are individuals where you have to remind them at the consult. You got to remind them with every text. You got to remind them at the prenatal, and then like morning of their birth, like it's because it's a completely new service to them.
Yeah.
And they probably hired you because their friend said, oh my God, get a doula.
Yeah.
Right? The second type, I find, are the ones who have never experienced support.
Yeah.
They're individuals who are highly independent, almost to a point where you're like, that's toxic. And individuals where, at least mine, are working really hard, like high-ranking jobs where they took until the very last minute to do that, like maternity leave, and they literally just don't have time or brain energy to think like someone would hold them.
Like someone is there to support them if they needed it. Yeah.
And
that's why I feel like I don't know if clients know what our role is and what our scope is. And I think that's maybe why I get frustrated when I see, and again, I feel that everybody can decide what their scope is as a doula. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, there's only one way, but I do feel I see such a wide variance.
Yeah.
And when we see that, then I'm seeing clients who don't understand what a doula is for, or what a doula can do, all right? Because I've had the clients where you don't text me back for your postpartum visit, right? And then I'm texting you, checking on you. You won't schedule a postpartum visit. And then it's like, yeah, everything went to shit. We've been, at the doctor's office like every week, and we couldn't breastfeed, and like, you're right, it's all these things. I'm like, I could have helped at least support in that situation. So that's where I think it's interesting that you said that maybe people just don't know how to accept support, and maybe that's what I'm seeing instead.
I think so.
And
I think it's much easier to go to a provider's office and be like, fix it.
Yeah.
Than to actually sit in that moment of like, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I wish somebody would just tell me that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's my thing is like, I'm like, obviously I'm not a medical provider. I can't fix these problems, but you could have someone supportive there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had a client once who was looking at like a very premature birth, and they were like, well, I just don't know if we should keep you. right? Because I only hired you to help me, like, have an unmedicated birth. And I was like, there has been a misunderstanding of what I'm here for. Right? And so that was like a conversation I had to have with them.
Another thing that I see, to your point of like services and like scope varying, there's been times where people have hired me over different doulas, or someone else has been hired over me, kind of thing. And I do wonder if those differences of ideas of what we should provide versus like our scope comes into play a lot, right? So the person who hears from, I don't know, one doula being like, I do 3 prenatal visits versus me who's like, I do 1, but my 1 is 4 hours. Versus her or his or theirs, like half hour for 3 of them. So there's a difference of what we're covering and what we're saying to you and how we're going to support.
And what we view our scope is, and if that aligns with people, which I could see that. I already feel less fired up about it to think about it now that we've talked it through. That I'm like, okay, I understand. The advocacy thing does still get to me because I 100%. Do feel
I think that should stay with us forever.
Yes, right? Because I do feel like there is something happening. We should be having those conversations. We shouldn't be like, yeah, the hospital's great. I'm a hospital doula and I'm in the hospital all the time and blah, blah, blah. We're just going to go with whatever the system goes. Because, again, in that situation, they could have saved $1,200, right? And let the nurse do what they were going to do, right?
Yep.
So that's where I feel... that's where I'll still get fired up.
The resistance. And I completely understand that. But that, I think, comes from educating the public rather than a doula. Okay. And that's, I think, why I'm so excited over where we are in this, like, doula community as I see it grow and prosper. Just even in, like, I've been essentially watching the communities for 4 years. Yeah. Like, in and out of, like, birthy kind of things for the last 4 years. And, like, seeing the difference between 4 years ago to now is a huge jump. Okay. It's a huge jump. And then I'm thinking, like, oh, my God, in 4 years, what is this going to look like?
Yeah. Because I'm almost at 2, so it hasn't been that long.
No, I did things like breastfeeding help and that kind of thing before this. So, like, I've been around the edges of doula work.
So you've kind of seen it, like, grow a little bit. Yeah.
The other part is, like, and maybe this is from doing it to this point now, the ones who cannot advocate, the ones who don't have fire in their bellies, the ones who, like, get scared off easily, gone.
They do fade. Yeah.
And how many of those, like, fucking doula trainings do we see go on constantly of, like, 25 people packed into the, like, we're doulas now.
And you never see them. Yeah.
Out of my class, there's one active doula, or there's me and one other active doula. That's it.
There's not a single person that I trained with that is, like, actively doing it.
I think there's, like, a couple things to that. I think part of it is, like, business setup and, like, advocacy.
I think also the misunderstanding of the amount of effort that goes into being a doula.
For sure. And, like,
people love to be like, oh, it seems like easy money. It seems like it would be. I'm like, we don't do this for the money, guys.
I would love it if it was for the monies. But yeah, I think that's, like, a big part of it is, like, we're seeing people drop out even before they started. And what I was going to say is, like, essentially it does make me a little sad when I see those moments because I almost feel like it's a horror scene where I'm, like, closing my eyes being like, which one gets hurt?
Right? Like when people don't become doulas or they, like, drop out?
Which one's going to end up hurt? Like, which one's going to end up traumatized because they, like, went to a couple births and they were like, oh, shit.
This is terrible.
Because, like, even low-key, let's say all of your births go significantly well-ish, right? Still seeing someone in pain for several hours, still seeing someone at that kind of intensity, that's still a semi-traumatic thing to witness and be in.
And we've talked about that, the whole haunting thing. I've been at births that everybody was fine, that I still felt like I carried with me for so long. Like, in my heart, like, oh my God. Like, Okay,
not sign of trauma of us laughing through that.
Trauma at all. But I have that feeling like, ooh, like that was like a lot, and you do have to process it. And I do always kind of wonder if that's why like nurses and doctors are like excited about epidurals and things like that.
I think so,
because it does take that away.
However, like probably the funniest thing I heard like 2 months into doing this work was the first person who requests an epidural is a tired doula.
Which is so funny to me because I would never in a million years.
Not me either, but I can see it happening.
Yeah.
I can see how you end up tired enough where you're like, hey, I got a fucked up shoulder. How do we feel about that epidural?
Do you need a nap?
Right. Hey, I mean,
do we need to rest or recover?
We've been doing this for like 10 hours.
Yeah.
What do you say, friend? Like we snuggle up with a cute needle. He's a nice guy out there. I'll just grab him. I'll just grab him. So
that's so funny.
I can see it happening. I've been at those births where like I've thought it. I've never said it out loud.
Yeah.
I'm totally for bodily autonomy and doing your thing, but that's when I am pulling in other things to help us through those moments.
Yeah.
Then the hip squeeze, where it's like, hey friend, we're not doing any more hip squeezes. You're having in the shower.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Like, I'm gonna go take my lunch. Hey bud, you back there? Come here.
You get to learn how to do hip squeezes today. No, I had one birth that was like 20 hours of hip squeezes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a lot.
Yeah. So, like, I think that's more my concern of, like, originally this conversation was about scope, and I went into, like, my sadness for new doulas.
That's okay. But I think I think it connects because I do think that, like, people's understanding of what our scope is does change how people hire us, does change how many people get into this work or what people seek after they're into this work. And that's what I'm saying. If your doula training is telling you not to advocate, you're not going to learn tools on advocacy, right? And that's where I get frustrated is you're not going to take it upon yourself to get that extra education if you were told not to do it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you say that. So, in a sense, do doulas have to advocate for tools for advocacy? Like, is it a bit of like a Russian doll situation?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because I think we have to advocate for each other. I think we have to, like,
yes.
I think all of that's built in,
Yes.
And, like, I don't know. It's just like, I lost my train of thought.
No, but I think you're right in that. I think you're right in that. I do think if individuals who are coming into doula trainings were like, this is what I know I want my scope to be like. Mm-hmm. Hey, trainer, this is what I want to learn. And trainer's like, I mean, that's not really what we cover, but you've got enough people in the class demand to get. Okay, I'll start to shift my stuff.
Yeah, and that's how that stuff will change. Or people are seeking other places that are teaching that instead of DONA, and the ones that aren't speaking that as like such an important part of this work,
Yeah.
And that's where, like, I mean, I'll plug birthing advocacy a million times.
Over and over and over again. Like, how many times? Let's do it again.
It's in the name.
Birthing advocacy.
You think they'll sponsor us? Let's send them this.
Holy shit, dude. Like,
this one,
mind,
there's a couple other things.
Birthing advocacy.
Because we've been plugging them for free this whole time.
For like 2 years.
But there are other trainings as well that cover advocacy and talk about that. And maybe that's just like us to newbies being like, hey, what if you didn't finish with DONA?
Yeah.
Right? What if you cross-certified with somebody else? Or, you know what I'm saying? Even that, I feel like, is a way to be like...
The number one that I hear is like, but I really want to learn in person. Friend, I hear you. What I will do for you, though, and like doula to doula, because I already see you that way because you're seeking this work, do the online course, and I will book 2 hours of my time with you, and I will teach you the hands-on part.
I bet you a lot of doulas would do that. I would do that in a heartbeat. I would, you know what I'm saying? I would facilitate that too in a heartbeat, because if that's the one thing, right? Like, if that's the one thing that's making you go for it, you know, like,
Yeah.
I think we should just dump Doula in the trash, personally. Very bold statement to make, but I'm not okay with it at this phase. You know, I'm not okay with the what do you usually say, like the MLM of doulas type thing, right? Multi-level marketing, not men loving men.
I mean, we're an open crowd here.
But like the multi-level marketing of like doula work,
is that
and
a surrogate doula?
pumping. What?
Are you talking about a surrogate doula?
What?
And men loving men?
No, I actually saw, this is so out of nowhere, okay.
We might cut this part.
That's okay. It was a TikTok of somebody talking about, like, their hot takes, right? And one of them was, like, MLMs preying on women. And someone in the comments was like, I cannot believe you're insinuating that gay men are predatory towards women.
Oh, my God. If anything, women are predatory to gay men and their culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then the response video was like, I'm talking about multi-level marketing schemes.
I love this.
So
I love every moment of this.
So that's why I just made that little caveat, because I think it's the funniest thing that, like, because TikTok is like where everybody blows everything out of proportion.
It's modern.
I cannot believe it.
But
yeah, the whole multi-level marketing, like you said, we're not even just pushing through doulas, we're pushing through nurses, and we're pushing through all these people that if we are pushing nurses through birthing advocacy trainings, that's what I would want to see, right?
Yeah.
I would want to see nurses learning about that stuff and social workers learning about the advocacy role of it, right? It doesn't matter if you can do a hip squeeze.
It doesn't matter if you know the stages of labor. Truly, it doesn't.
Yes.
Because you'll learn that rhythm with time.
Yes.
And I think that's like such a good point that you're making of like where are they learning it from and which organizations can we start to really make sure that are getting the push that they should.
Yes. And we're putting Doula on this pedestal, right? That's what everybody knows. Everybody hears about it, but they're not doing it well. And they're not doing right by the doulas that they're training, and therefore not doing it right by the clients that the doulas are serving.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's where I have an issue with that, right? If the largest organization is saying that your scope is, first of all, not letting you decide what your scope is going to be, right? And second of all, telling you your scope that doesn't include advocacy, okay. Maybe we shouldn't be giving them our money. Because I know all these DONA certified people are paying DONA a lot of money.
I did. I was one of those people.
Well, and don't you have to continue to pay?
After you're certified, you have to continue to pay like a membership fee and then to recertify every couple years. And then
do that.
And then every 5 years you have to go reattend the certification like training. So yeah, there's a lot of money there. And like, I think it's so funny because we're talking about this and you guys heard my ad read at the beginning. Like, what a hypocrite, Emmy. All this money and like you're doing.
No, I don't think it's hypocritical.
No. So I'm gonna finish it this way.
Okay.
There's a difference though between making sure that my fellow doulas have tools in a niche birth and like making sure that you do understand your advocacy, making sure you do have those tools and like rolling forward and filling in the gaps of these donuts, of these like kappas.
Well, that's what I was going to say is you wouldn't have to make those things if they were already covering them.
Right.
If there was a substantial, if DONA was doing what they were supposed to be, there wouldn't be all of the other ones that people choose instead. Right. There wouldn't be pro doula, there wouldn't be smaller people doing it, there wouldn't be birthing advocacy, right? Those things are born out of a need.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And what you're doing was born out of a need.
Yeah.
Right? We've heard you talk about trying to work with other VBAC people and then being not tuned into it and not wanting to actually make these big changes that you're talking about, right? So,
exactly. I think it's interesting,
and
though.
like too long didn't read, give Emmy your money.
I think it's important to understand too that this can be a money-making venture.
Yeah.
And it can be a huge money-making venture, and to be aware of that predatory talk around it.
Yeah.
Because
you're talking about like training organizations,
or even doula work, like going into agencies and like these other routes where you can get caught in someone's webs of like, got another paycheck, right? Like, be aware, not only like when you enter this work, but as you're like moving your way through it and discovering like, what is my scope and where do I kind of want to land, and like, where am I and how am I going to blossom in this work? Like, be aware of those nets that people are casting to try and to reel you in and like keep you. So, and that's not me talking shit. That's like
just you need to be aware of it, right? Like you need to be conscious of it. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there, and I really think it has gotten very MLM-y, and I think it has gotten very like money hungry in certain sections of this. So be very careful. And I'm the first one who will talk shit about VBAC Link. Do not take their training. Please don't. Don't do it. It's the same training that they give their parents. And if you're
which is wild.
If you're
it is wild.
Then, like, seriously, just listen to the ad at the beginning and I'll teach you. Yeah, I think it's important.
Okay, let's read one more comment.
Yeah, so essentially what she's talking about is Dona is like, we support all birth. Like, it's all birth, but you're only allotted 3 births for your certifying birth, and only one of those can be a C-section. The rest have to be vaginal births because...
Wah, wah, wah. It's terrible.
Because...
It sounds like you don't think that all birth is equal.
Because
okay.
There we go. And you've literally said the thing that I've criticized Dona from the moment I was in their classroom.
Yeah.
And I literally did a reel today of like my personal trainer. She was great. She had a VBAC herself. We were able to relate a lot. There was someone in the class who was like, if it goes to a C-section, why would they even need us? And essentially the trainer's like, reasons, but wouldn't it be like, because it's fucking birth?
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like the client saying, well, I'm not going to have this traditional birth where I need this like physical support. So do I need you? Right? And like after I've already been hired, paid half of my fee, I have to like consult you again about like what a doula is and what I can do for you and what I can support for you. And if you feel that you don't need that, that's totally fine, right? But it's so interesting to me that clients and doulas have that mindset. Oh, C-section, why would I even be there? I gotta go. See you later. Hope you had have a good time. I don't know, like
you watching this right now, sis, you pull that, we're gonna have problems. No ma'am.
Yeah, so it's just But I think that's a great point. Oh, we're getting hearts again. I love it.
Oh, thank you. It's all very suspicious. So I think it's more important because we've all been there of like, where do I go? And like, where do I train through?
Yeah.
Go beyond what your SEO first pushes, because the first 5 are going to be probably Dona Kappa.
People who paid to be there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then from there, really ask yourself, who do I want to be in that room? If you want to be a hip squeezer, awesome. I'm like super stoked for you.
Same.
I would love to go back to the days where I thought I was just going to be a hip squeezer. It was much simpler. But I'm stoked for you. Then make sure you go to the organizations that support that and allow you to be the best fucking hip squeezer ever. If you're someone who's like, I want to learn everything about advocacy and trauma, find those organizations that talk about that. Yeah. If you think that you're supposed to be like a blend of each, do a little bit of both.
And that's what I was going to say, is that I encourage people to like decide what your scope is and tell everybody that. Yeah. Like let people know what you will do, what you will not do, right? That's just another way to set boundaries of like who you are as a doula and what you're offering and what you can bring to a birth space. And like it's allowed to be different for everybody. right? And you're allowed to only support home births or only birth center births or decide that you're not an advocate, right? You're allowed to do that.
Yes.
But you should be upfront about that.
Yeah.
Right? So you should know that about yourself and you should share that, I think.
For sure.
That's my mommy.
Hi, Mommy.
My mom just joined our live.
Hi. It's so nice to meet you. I think what you said was really special, and I think that's like the best way for us to kind of like wrap up this conversation.
Love it.
Because truly, we will never be able to tell you what your scope should be or what it is. I can tell you mine, and Alex can tell you hers.
Yeah.
And someone else could tell you theirs.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be some sort of Venn diagram between us.
Yeah. And I definitely still think I'm a bit of a bodyguard. But in the one that like amplifies your voice instead of like talking over you kind of thing. You know?
I've truly taken on the like I'm a megaphone in the room.
Yes, same.
I really enjoy being a megaphone. I also really enjoy looking like a butch lesbian at times. Just so they're like,
what are you here for? Who
is
are
she
you?
like the partner? Is this like a trio?
Maybe we shouldn't ask any further questions. Like if you didn't introduce yourselves, maybe they just assume.
Hey babe, how you doing? People
I love
leave
it.
the room real fast after that. That's a joke. I've never done that.
All right.
All right.
Let's wrap up this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to Ring of Fire. I'm Alex Barr.
And I'm Emmy the Birth Wizard.
Thank you. We love you. Send us an email or a DM.
At gmail.com.
Or a DM if you're interested in advertising anything that you think would advertise well to doulas and stuff like that. I think
cards, wraps, tinctures.
Love it. All
the
the things. Yes.
The trainings.
Doula trainings, all that stuff. I really want to crowdsource the advertisement and make it work instead of trying to make tons of money off of Audible or whatever bullshit. I don't even know how people do that stuff.
Tons of money. It's points.
I know it's like so
0.016 per ad read per listener. So
Yeah.
we're, hundredth of a cent per listener. So we're actually going to make sure that your guys' listens go further by doing this, and that you're able to hit a better
instead
market.
of playing Facebook or Amazon or whatever. And again, I don't know how any of that works.
Cute. You're so cute. I'm so glad I'm here.
All right. Bye, guys.